We have good old Ann. After walking 11 kilometers due north, you know what? I'm going to do a compass rose. A hiker then walks due east. What's the total distance? Well, the distance is going to be 11 plus 18. It's 29 kilometers. It's the scalar. Displacement is a vector. Keegan, all vectors have magnitude and what? So I'm going to expect you, if it's a vector, sometimes I'll put in brackets to remind you magnitude and direction, but I won't always. I'll expect you to pay attention and clue in. How will I do that? I'm going to add these tip to tail. It's going to be 11 plus 18 This is my resultant. As a magnitude, it's going to be 11 squared plus 18 squared square root. $21.1. 1 mark for that. And then I need a direction. Theta is going to go in the bottom left, color, 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 opposite, adjacent. Tan theta equals opposite over adjacent. 18 divided by 11. Is it 58.6 degrees? 58.6 degrees. North of south, east of west, what of what? Start out going northeast of north. You're right. Yeah. Yep. The way I usually mark these, if it's 2 marks, I would give you 1 mark for the magnitude, a half mark for the theta, and a half mark for the what of what. You could also have answered 90 minus that. You could also have answered 31.4 degrees north of east. That would be if you drew the 18 first and then the 11. That's why we said there's always 2 answers for these, right? Number 2, a motorboat heads due east at 16 meters per second across a river that flows due. I'm going to draw a compass rose because I've scrolled down. On your pieces of paper, if you just draw a compass rose at the top, obviously I'm not going to freak out, but because I'm scrolling down, I'll put one almost always next to each question. Heads due east, so the river flows due north. I'm going to dulp. There's the river. The boat's heading east at 16. The river's flowing north at 8. Madison, again, without even thinking about it, I kind of drew it roughly to scale. I said 8's going to be about half as long as 16. It's a good habit because then your pictures, the answers will look close to what it says on your calculator. You're not going to freak out when you get, a small angle, but your picture has a huge angle or something like that. Hey, Madison, I want to add these 2 together. Any thoughts on how? Tip to tail is correct. I'm so proud of you. Well done. Okay. It looks like this is going to be the resultant, where theta is there, color, color, color. As a magnitude, it's going to be 8 squared plus 16 squared square root. 17.9, is that right, as a magnitude? Zaina's smiling at the quiz. She's certainly not smiling at something on her phone, right? Right. I'm glad you find my quiz so joyful. You made my heart. You're getting the joy of physics. I really respect that. You might want to put your phone completely away so it's not a temptation at all, because I'll catch you again next time. Meters per second at, I think again it's going to be tangent. It's going to be tan theta equals 8 over 16. Is it 26.6 degrees? 26.6 degrees. North of south, east of west, what of what? That one is north of east. Don't put a, same thing as before. 1 mark for the magnitude, half mark for the theta, half mark for the what of what. If the river is 155 meters wide, how long does it take the motorboat to reach the other side? For the river and crosswind questions, what did I tell you A was going to be? Yeah, I could give you also a vector acceleration. We did do one vector acceleration as an example in the notes with that VF equals VI plus AT. I'm not going to flog it. So, you know what? I think I can just use D equals VT. But now I need to add some directional stuff. The width of the river is 155 meters. Nick, would you call that 155 horizontal or vertical? Yeah, horizontal. And my abbrev for horizontal is? Which letter of the alphabet that comes before Y? So I'm going to instead say dx equals Vx t. Why didn't I put an x on the t? T's a scalar. It can be either. It wants me to get the t by itself. Nick, keep going. How would I get the t by itself? Yep. And again, a is 0. This is d equals VIT plus a half AT squared in disguise, but when a is 0, it just becomes d equals VT. Not even VI, because your V is constant, right? T is going to be dx divided by Vx. It's going to be 155 divided by... Nick, which velocity is horizontal? Which velocity is Vx? Look at the picture. You got it. So look at the dot. There's only one that's horizontal in the same direction as the distance. Look up. Here's my picture. Yes! Okay? That should be... Oh yeah, got it, right? How about put the divided by in there, Mr. Dewick? 9.69 seconds. How far downstream is the boat when it reaches the river? I guess downstream is north in this case, but for rivers, downstream doesn't matter what direction it is. It's the direction the water is flowing. So I'll make a little note here. I guess they want me to find this distance, but Lena, will I call that dx? No. What will I call that? D? Because I asked you to. D? Why? Because I asked you. Okay, sorry. So I'm going to say that dy equals vyt plus a half AT. Oh, what's A? 0. So no plus a half AT squared. I can, I've got the D by itself already. It's going to be plug and chug. It's going to be Vy, which is 8 times my answer. I'm going to write 9.69, but because I have a good calculator, I'm going to use my answer button. 7.75. 77 point. I think I said 7.75. 77.5 meters. Pause. Next page over. North, I see, okay. Compass rose. Now it wants the components. So this force is 140 degrees, 67 degrees west of north. West of what? West of what? West of what? I'm going to draw the of north first. West of north. Am I going to head to the left or to the right? So go back to where I started, go up a little ways. How many degrees? 67 degrees. I'll eyeball it. There is my vector of 140. If I break this into components, I guess it's going to be d, 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 d. This is going to be fx, horizontal. This is going to be fy, vertical. And that's 67 degrees. Color, color, color. Opposite, hypotenuse, adjacent. If I find fy, it's going to be cosine of 67 equals fy over 140. Fy ends up being 140 cosine 67. 54.7. And the units are newtons. sine is going to be fx. So fx ends up being 140 times the sine of 67. And again, because I have a good calculator, I can just backspace and edit. 129? I would give you 1 mark for each of these. Now, it didn't specifically say directions. This is to the left. You could call it west or negative. Usually for components, we're finding the magnitudes, and then when we redraw them as vectors, we'll bring in the directions. But if you put a direction in there, it's not wrong. Sled is being pulled along the ground. I chose to assume the sled was being pulled to the right. I said, there is my 117 newtons at 72 degrees, color, color, color. We want to find the horizontal and vertical, hypotenuse, opposite, adjacent. I said, you know what? Sine of 72 degrees is going to be Fy over 117. And I got 111.3, but I usually go to 3 sig figs in my final answer. Cos 72 is going to be Fx over 117. $36.2. Is that correct? 1 mark for each of those. Looks like we got one more component. It's giving me compass directions, so I'm going to put a compass rose. 65 degrees south of east. South of what? East. South of what? East. South of what? East. I'm going to start out going east. South of east means I'm going to go down. So I think this vector looks like that. 25.6, 65 degrees. And they want the east-west and north-south components. So that's going to be, I guess since it's a distance, I'll use the letter dx. And because it's a distance, I'll use the letter dy. Color, 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 color. Opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse. I guess dx is going to be cos. So cos 65 equals dx over 25.6. Cos, Mr. Duick. And I'm pretty sure the 10.8. I'm pretty sure the other one's going to be sine, and that's kilometers. Sine 65 equals dy over 25.6. $23.2 kilometers. 1 mark for each of those. Okay. I've just turned the page. I'm going to do a compass rose. This is an airplane crosswind question. Now, this wants me to find the engine velocity. Sarah, the first thing I did is I wrote down my airplane crosswind question, and then I said, okay, I guess the engine velocity is going to be ground minus wind. How do I subtract vectors? I don't. What do I do instead? So, ground, due west, let's change colors, Mr. Duick. Due west at 250, plus wind was originally north at 45. I guess it's going to be negative wind south at 45. These are the two vectors that I'm going to add together tip to tail. I'll get 250. Well, 50 is 1/5 of 250, so 45 is going to be roughly 1/5. It's going to be pretty short. Probably like that would be better scale. This here must be the engine velocity. Magnitude, color, and direction. So the engine velocity, it's a hypotenuse, so it's going to be 250 squared plus 45 squared. 64th, that's way too, square root. Don't forget to square root. And I get a magnitude of almost bang on 254, where the units meters per second or kilometers per hour, meters per second, at, opposite, adjacent, shift tan equals opposite over adjacent. .2 degrees. North of south, east of west, what of what? South of west? If you got this, you would give yourself 7 out of 7 for this question. Otherwise, in terms of part marks, I would probably give you 1 mark if I saw that. I would probably give you 1 mark if I saw the vector triangle. I would give you 1 mark if I saw that you'd figured out to use tangent. I would give you 1 mark for the magnitude, 1 mark for the theta, 1 mark for the what of what, and I would probably give you, I don't know, maybe even 1 mark for cluing in that it's an airplane question and then you had to subtract it. I'd probably do something like that. But if you got the right answer, you would get 7 out of 7. So usually for these big written questions, Nick, what I do is I glance, did you get the right answer? Full marks. If not, I go hunting for stuff. So on written questions, you don't want to cut corners. Show me your work so I can give you the full marks. Can you give yourself a lovely score, please, out of 20?